The opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me for the second last time is my expert panel, Christina and Anna. How are you both?
Good, how are you?
I'm bittersweet. Bittersweet.
Yep.
You?
Yep. I feel the same way.
Anna?
I feel the same way, but I also feel happy that I won't have to take the TTC from downtown Toronto, so, you know.
Of course. Well, we know how much you hate the TTC, and as we all do. It's not a great system. Not a great system. But, of course, joining us as our special guest, returning guest this week, is friend of the show, Tanya Wiseman. Tanya, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in. At this point, I feel a little unsafe living in the city, but I feel safer as opposed to anywhere else, I think. So grateful to be in the city.
Yeah, here. It's great to have you, of course. This is the fourth time you're appearing on the show. You're almost at Christina's level, which is five. But obviously, unfortunately...
I still lost. That's okay.
That's okay. You're a winner in our hearts. You are
runner-up. Yeah.
You are a winner in our hearts. Just remember that. So, can you just remind our audience a little about yourself?
Sure. So, I am a 23-year-old from Toronto, Ontario. I have a BA in political science from Ryerson, and I plan to become a lawyer one day. Currently studying for LSAT, and that's about it. So,
wow. So, yes. I mean, we have a former lawyer from Venezuela in the room, and now we're gonna have a lawyer in Canada. So, you guys got a lot of talking to do between the two of you. Maybe you can connect and see. You guys know each other. I don't have to do this, but
of course. We talk almost every day, but about any other topic.
Yeah, as do we. I think we all talk daily, talking about life, talking about the show. Once again, second last episode if you're just joining. But before we get to our weekly update, it's time for the Raben Rant. Okay. I have so much to say, and yet can't put into words how I feel, but I'm going to try. The Raben Rant is supposed to be an opinionated piece of the show, but what I'm going to talk about, I don't think should have an opposing position. Jews are unsafe being Jewish around the world. Jews are being lynched in the streets of Toronto and New York, the cities with two of the largest Jewish communities outside of Israel. The same people that stood up and said no to anti-Asian hate and no to anti-black racism are completely silent on the rampant anti-Semitism that Jews are currently experiencing. This is not a conflict between Jews and Palestinians. This is a conflict between the IDF and a terrorist organization named Hamas. They're a legally recognized terrorist organization. That's a fact. At the end of the day, most of what you've seen on social media has been one-sided and hasn't promoted peace. Instead, the truth is, unfortunately, it's about ridding the world of Jewish people. And the media is doing its part to make that happen. When people talk about more casualties on one side, claiming that it doesn't matter that rockets are being launched at Israel because they have their Iron Dome missile defense system, they're basically saying it doesn't matter until there are more dead Jews. The deaths of innocent Palestinians are equally important, but when they come at the hands of Hamas, misfiring over 400 rockets at their own people, suddenly those lives don't matter to the world. They matter to me, though. So it's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly infuriating to see the people I considered friends stand by and let this happen. When protesters shout, "Kill all Jews," when they paint vans to say Hitler was right and even drive through Jewish communities, as well as vandalize synagogues and dox Jewish businesses, and then have the audacity to wonder how the Holocaust ever happened. This is how it happened. This is how it started. When we say never again, we mean never again. Thank you. Good. Feels good to get that off my chest. I know that meant a lot to you as well, Tanya.
No, I think that was needed, and that was very well said.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what I strive to do on the Raben Rant. So coming up in 15 minutes, we'll be talking about our main topic, education in Canada. But first, let's take a look at our top stories in our weekly updates, starting with a coronavirus update, because we haven't talked about it in a while. You know, things are great here in Ontario. The AstraZeneca vaccine was halted in Canada because a lot of people had blood clots. Stay-at-home order was extended until June 2nd in Ontario. Major General Danny Fortin has left his role with the Public Health Agency of Canada as the military general in charge of the logistics of Canada's COVID-19 vaccine rollout and is now the subject of a military investigation. Ford has said, however, in lighter news, that camps will be allowed to open by the summer. So, AstraZeneca's paused, stay-at-home orders extended. When will this pandemic be over? Because as I was saying to you all before the show, Eurovision is going on. Love that event. And everyone's in person, except Australia, they couldn't make it. But the entire stadium is packed, all the teams were there, and yet we can't go golf. Not that we necessarily want to, but we can't.
At this point, I hate golf, but I want to play golf. So.
Just to make a point.
Yeah.
I want to go golfing. I think it's all so ridiculous. Where else in the world are these I will say I do have a coworker who lives in India, and their restrictions, I know we think we have it bad, which we do, but they actually do have it worse there. They can be fined and jailed for leaving their house. So I mean, we have it bad, but it could be worse, which is doesn't make it any better, but I do think it puts it into perspective that, you know, there are other places in the world that you can't even leave your house to get, like, you have a time frame to get groceries, and you could get fined for being outside. So
the fact that that's even allowed anywhere
it's terrible.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be jailed for going outside. Like, everybody needs fresh air. People need to, you know, like, I understand if you have to close. I mean, I don't like that businesses are closed. I understand some of the restrictions in order to, you know, keep people apart, but sometimes it makes no sense. Like, why is fresh air illegal?
You know, they tell you to go outside and then say, don't go to this particular park or don't go to tennis courts. Well, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
Also,
you can go outside, but every park ever is like closed off. They've got like chains up or whatever it is.
And then public areas are still iffy because there's that whole, well, is it scientific? Like, do we still need to wear the mask outside? Because if we go to public areas, some people are going to complain about that if you're, you know, still not wearing a mask. And it's like, do I want to go through that? Well, I don't think so. I don't.
Now, Anna, you actually posted that you agreed with the NDP about something, which is shocking for you. And why is that?
Because they were actually proposing that tennis courts and golf courts, I don't know if that's the correct word.
Golf
sorry.
courses.
Yeah. They should open. And I totally agree. I find that it doesn't make any sense to forbid and to block these spaces because, like, let's be honest, it's irrational. Like, I don't really think that you're going to get COVID from playing golf. Like, it's
really
ridiculous.
I don't think there's any backing there's no contact tracing to support that there were enough transmissions, let alone, like, well, there worse, some of course, but not enough to
even when
impose
you're
those
playing
regulations.
tennis, like you are keeping distance
Yeah.
with the other competitor. So it doesn't make sense, and it shows you that it's something completely political.
Mm-hmm.
That people are just going to support something because certain party is supporting something, and that's the way it goes. So it's completely irrational at this point, and I cannot believe that I'm siding with NDP about something. But here
So,
I am.
These lockdowns, in your opinion, are absolutely not working, and do you think they're absolutely unconstitutional as well?
I honestly think they are not working at this point, and I think that people should be free, especially, let's be honest, we live in a country where you don't get nice weather all year long. All the
Yeah.
opposite. Like, people want to go out, especially around this time.
So what do you guys think about the termination or the pause on the use of AstraZeneca vaccines because there were so many blood clots? I mean...
Well, the blood clot thing, like I have a higher chance of getting a blood clot from birth control, etc. But the AstraZeneca being on pause actually bothers me because, well, my dad got the AstraZeneca shot, and he's a little bit concerned because they're talking about now you can mix them, which, I mean, I don't know if that's like I would rather get two of the same one. I think everyone would.
I do think that I'm not 100% sure how it's going to work, but Health Canada has said that people who got their first dose of AstraZeneca, maybe it's if you didn't have complications, they will still provide you with the second dose. I may be wrong, but they reassured people that because some people can't take the other vaccines because they're a different makeup or whatever.
Yeah,
I think
I was going to get in. Yeah. Well, the Johnson and Johnson and AstraZeneca are non-mRNA vaccines, and the J&J is it's supposed to be only one shot. And so I was actually like looking forward to getting either the AstraZeneca or J&J just because I'm personally more comfortable with taking a non-mRNA vaccine. But I still wanted to get vaccinated eventually. So I mean, I just think they're going to hold the non-mRNA ones off for the youth.
Yeah. I do want to say though, like if you want to put it in perspective, of the AstraZeneca vaccines, Canada has administered about 2 million, and of those 2 million, there's been 28 reported cases of blood clots. So when you put that into perspective, that is 0.000014%. So it's very unlikely that you're going to get blood clots. I understand the concern around it, and especially because right now everyone's so skeptical around the vaccines in general. But to put it in perspective for people who kind of like fear what could happen when you take these vaccines, the likelihood of something like that happening is so low. And I have family members who also took the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I hope that they can get the same dose for their second one. But
and the key though that you mentioned, the key is the statistics, right? What is the science saying? So according to Doug Ford, the science is saying that lockdowns are working. According to the research that you just mentioned, Christina, the AstraZeneca blood clots represent a very small portion of who's getting them. So, I mean, when are we going to be out of this? That's the question.
It's so hard to say. Like, we're getting clowned on online, like everywhere in all these places in the States are just making fun of us. Ontario specifically, for being in the situation that we are. There's like people at clubs in Florida holding signs saying "fuck Doug Ford."
Really?
Yeah, and it's like people who never knew anything about Ontario suddenly
experts.
Well, they
even Joe Rogan.
Oh yes.
Even Joe Rogan talked about the Doug Ford lockdowns.
I mean, I feel like
it's
people...
amazing. We're in the world where people know about us
yeah, we're
now.
being put on the map. So
listen,
whatever.
but it's not the first time. It's a comeback because remember, Rob Ford made headlines around the world.
So
He
it's
was
about
on
the
Jimmy
Ford
Kimmel.
people.
And I'm pretty sure
our party leader.
I'm pretty sure Joe Rogan even made a comment. You know, the brother of the crack smoker.
Yikes.
Yikes! That's what we are.
Maybe he's the stable brother. He's
That's stability.
Okay. Yeah, this guy's got stability. This Ford's good.
Stability.
Nothing about Ontario is stable right now. Let's just
not
put it
at
that
all,
way.
Not at all.
But let's talk about more instability, but personal instability, and that's about Chrissy Tegan. She got canceled. A very big proponent of cancel culture. Chrissy Tegan got canceled, and I'll tell you why, because I didn't remember, because I don't really care about Chrissy Teigen, but cancel culture is important, which is why we're talking about it. So last week, allegations arose of Chrissy Teigen's online harassment. Stories of her negative comments were thrown into the spotlight after media personality Courtney Stodden stated in a Daily Beast interview that Tegan repeatedly encouraged them to commit suicide when they were just 16 years old. She said she wouldn't just publicly tweet about wanting me to take a dirt nap, but would privately DM me and tell me to kill myself. She also said things like, "I can't wait for you to die," and not only her, but Joy Behar had a field day with calling me a slut. Courtney Love told me I was a whore. Chrissy Teigen's cookware line has been pulled from Macy's and Target as a result. And while they claim that it's unrelated, the unavailability of Teigen's products come just days after these revelations. So Chrissy Teigen has been a vocal tweeter, and is this just karma? What do you guys think?
Okay, so all the people that you listed off who also chimed in to call Courtney Stodden a slut, I don't know when we got to this place where this is also at the time where she's being called these things. She was a teenage girl. She was a minor. She was 16 years old. Why did more than one person think it was okay to attack a teenager who was clearly there was something very weird going on. I guarantee there's a lot of trauma from what happened to her. For people who don't know, Courtney Stodden's mother basically, she became famous after her mother signed off on letting her marry a 50-year-old man when she was 16. So, calling her a slut after her mother signs off on her 16-year-old daughter getting married to a 50-year-old man seems really twisted to me. And Chrissy Teigen, I'm sure, is all for female empowerment. She's all for respecting women. But she calls a teenage girl a slut and tells her to kill herself and take a dirt nap. It's disgusting. And this isn't the first time Chrissy Teigen has done something vile. She's done it to other people online. So I reject her as a
role model,
or somebody who's empowering to women, because she is absolutely not. And to attack and the thing that's so disturbing, to attack this girl who, yes, I understand she's a woman now, she's of age, Courtney Stodden can make her own decisions and people can judge her, but when that stuff is happening to a 16-year-old child, that's where I draw the line, because there's clearly, it's more than just her own decisions at work. When you're 16, you make stupid decisions. You think you know everything. We've all been 16 before.
Do you notice that it's the people that advocate for cancel culture the most actually have the dirtiest histories? The most skeletons in their closet?
It's probably a way to cover up for it. Oh, look at me. It's virtue signaling. It's like, oh, look at me. Let's cancel everybody. I'm all for peace and being politically correct. But that just stems from internalized shame in the fact that you could be canceled any moment.
You know that I don't think these people actually have a lot of shame. I just think that they feel that they are superior in their own vision of things than others, and they don't judge themselves in the same way that they will judge other people. So, for example, about all the female empowerment thing, I have already seen, this is not the first time that some, self-called feminists or, look at me, I'm a role model for women, is usually harassing other women. Actually, it's more common than you would think. Even in office environment, it's very common to see female bosses harassing younger and more,
criticizing them for things that they don't criticize their male employees for.
Yes, exactly.
When I worked at or volunteered at a summer camp,
which you can again this summer.
Yeah, and I'm not going to name names because I do still love the place, but there was a culture of you would have these reviews, and I remember getting a review that I had too much cleavage in my bathing suit, and it was inappropriate to be like that around children. But you need to wear a bathing suit to go swimming. I wasn't wearing a skanky, stringy bathing suit.
You're just like, but you need a bathing suit to go swimming.
Sorry, I apologize for having breasts. not my fault. Didn't ask for it. So there's a culture of, tearing women down and criticizing their appearance. And a lot of the time it comes from other women.
That was what I wanted to ask. Why is it that women seem to be more competitive with each other than men?
Insecurity and jealousy.
I just want to say, like, Candace Owens, I like Candace Owens. I don't agree with everything she says, but she's not perfect either. Like, in that debate with Blair White, this is one of the only instances where I actually just really got pissed off at Candace Owens.
Which that interview alone is like what makes me despise her.
Yeah, she just would refuse to call her by her preferred gender, and it's just like, in that situation, like, you cannot look at that and not think that that's not disrespectful. Like,
or you don't think that she is a woman because
Yeah.
she
You
clearly looks like a woman.
You can't look at Blair White and think that that's
It's
not
a man.
That's a woman.
like, it was
if I've
clear
ever
that
seen
Candace
one.
was just doing that out of her own personal opinion. Like, she doesn't, I don't want to say transphobic, but she had, it's just,
Very strong convictions,
yeah,
and she
like,
doesn't want to let
that
it
was
go.
unnecessary.
I'm sure also an aspect of insecurity being in a room with somebody who's a transgender
Yeah.
woman who is so attractive
Yeah.
and well spoken, and you're there as a cisgender woman, and there's insecurity, I'm sure, that comes
Yeah.
with that if you're not totally confident in yourself.
I also read one time, now that you make that question, Elliot, and I like a lot reading about psychology, and one of the topics is the Proclusto Syndrome, and this
What's that?
Well, Proclusto Syndrome is when it comes from the name of a figure in Greek mythology, and it pretty much means that in order to shine, you want to, bring others down. And this therapist, she was well spoken, and she explains a lot of things. She has a podcast on YouTube, and she explained that women, unfortunately, they are more likely to suffer from this syndrome than men. Even sometimes women can feel that syndrome towards their own daughters, mothers for their own teenage daughters. So, I don't know why is that. I don't know, like, I'm not a psychologist myself. It would be a good question to make, but yes, that's one of the reasons.
Well, it's definitely, we all agree that it's not right, and that's where we're going to leave it there. Now, let's move on to our main topic, which is education in Canada. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights affirms that education is a fundamental human right for everyone, and Canada is no different. In this country, parents are responsible for their children to get an education. Provincial and territorial governments set up and run their own school systems. And while they're pretty similar across the country, there are differences between the jurisdictions. Here, we have the opportunity to choose whether we attend public schools, French immersion schools, religious schools, as well as private schools. Now, some of those aren't mutually exclusive. There are French private schools and religious public schools, and so forth. There is a lot of choice. Homeschooling is even a choice. This discussion, however, will examine how our schooling system operates from the curriculum in elementary and high schools to freedom of speech on university campuses, as well as international education and how foreign credentials are recognized. The topic of education in Canada is also very relevant with Bill 287, the Equity in Education for Young Ontarians Act, which will be debated tomorrow at Queen's Park. What is this bill? Stay tuned to find out. Tonight, our panel with returning guest Tonya takes a look at the intricacies and what makes it, and what about the Canadian education system makes it so great. Ignorance will not be bliss once you tune in to this episode of the Raben Report. And as always, we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed to have your thoughts read live on air. So let's begin. What do you guys think of the public school curriculum in elementary and high schools? What's your take on it, Christina?
I've always appreciated our curriculum. I recognize its flaws, as with any system, but I do think we have a really strong one. And just to point out a statistic, for the past at least 5 years, Canada has been ranked as one of the best public school education systems in the world. Top 5 for the past 5 years. Within the top 3 more recently. So we have a good system, and we're widely praised for our public school system. Does it have its flaws? Of course, and I mean, we'll get into that, but I appreciate it, and I learned a lot in public school. That's what got me to university, so I do appreciate it.
And in regards to public schools, do you think that they have a different tone or a different mindset than, say, public schools in the States? Because there's always a very negative connotation.
Yeah, I think that here there's a few differences. We pay our teachers better. Our teachers are qualified. There's people in the States where, they had at one point there were teacher shortages, and they were hiring people who didn't have a teaching degree or certification. So there were literally non-teachers teaching students, and there still are. So I think we do have a stronger system, and I think we're it's just our teachers are and I'm not to flex, but my mother's a teacher, and I've always found her to be, she's very well spoken. Most of the stuff that I've learned about being a woman and learned about the world is from her. So, that could be me just. Okay.
And Tanya, what do you think about the current school system we have in Ontario, the curriculum?
Curriculum wise, I'm sure it's changed since the time like Christina and I have been in elementary school, but I think that there definitely was, we're going to talk about critical race theory and colonialism, what they want to change and whatnot, but I think that there was a basis of that history, and I remember learning about colonialism, Canadian, in elementary school, so I don't want to say because I don't know how it is now. I know that they haven't got rid of that part of it, so I think that it is overall good. But there's flaws and such in the way, like class sizes, I think could be a problem, because I just think people learn better in smaller sizes. So there's flaws.
Yeah, the class sizes thing, and like from the stories my mom's told me, it's an unreasonable amount of students in one classroom, and these are also students like with IEPs, students with autism, and it's one teacher handling that. That's a lot to put on somebody, and it's like classes of over 25.
Well, here's the thing.
How big is the class size in a regular school in Ontario?
I mean, it's 20. From when I went to elementary and high school, it was like 20 to 28.
Yeah, it's been averaging like much higher than that recently.
You think so?
No, that's
30 plus.
There's been reports of like
before
students
COVID,
with like before COVID, like teachers having almost 40 students in a class.
Yeah, and in Venezuela it's normal to get 40 students in a class.
Yeah.
And it's not bad, really.
How was that for you?
For me, it was good. Like, I learned a lot. I don't have any complaints. I went to one of the best universities in my country, and I don't have any problem with that.
Is it a private school system there? Or did you go to public
and
school?
private, the same. I went to a semi-private Catholic school and then to a public high school.
Okay. Because I mean, just in terms of the way that like education systems differ, I'm sure other countries are more equipped for such large classrooms, but I don't think like if you look at Ontario specifically, we have the resources.
We have the most people too, so it's hard. But like in my case, I went to they call it alternative elementary school. But part of that means there's smaller class sizes, and I just think like I was so grateful for that. I don't know. I think that helped me a lot, because
that can be beneficial for a lot of students. Yeah.
Now here's the question though. When you talk about larger class sizes, that was a big issue for the Ford government right when they got into office. You look at university lecture halls. And there's, in my program, the most was 300 people. But at U of T, you can have 1,000 people, right?
I had a class with 1,000 people.
So why is that not as big an issue as, say, classroom sizes in elementary and high schools?
Because I just feel like because if you're older, it's more manageable.
And I think because when you go to university, everybody's an adult. I mean, I'm an October baby, so I was 17 for about a month. But I mean, for the most part, people are adults in university, and you can manage workload and paying attention and that sort of thing more than, say, somebody's who's in the second grade, of course. So I think there's an aspect of maturity with it, like from the students, and also universities are just they're built to withstand those kind of class sizes. The class that I had that did have 1,000 students, it was like a Psych 101 class, one of those classic first year courses. And
how did that make you feel? Get it? Because it's psych.
Yeah, good one, Elliot.
Thank you. I have 2 more runs at this. It's
That's
fine.
just crazy. I cannot imagine a
But it
class
was-
with 1,000
It
students.
didn't. There was like, we had the eye clicker,
Yeah.
so like you would get, so you would participate sometimes by just clicking on
I
this
almost
little
feel
device.
like in a lecture setting, not that it doesn't matter, but like you're in university, you have to almost force yourself to be very independent and just motivated and
Yeah.
have that mindset.
And it was like a
driven.
hybrid system of like you went to lecture, but so
Yeah.
much of it was online, so that kind of helped to manage the fact that
Like
there
in
were
your
1,000.
experience?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
that helped to manage the fact that it was 1,000 people. Like we would have, I mean, we would never have the full 1,000 people because not everybody comes to class.
Yeah.
But we would have like regularly like 500 students at least sitting in a lecture, which was. I mean, these lecture halls are massive, so
Yeah.
it doesn't seem that big. But I mean,
Well, yeah, and for us though, like I said, my program is small. There was only 165 people in media production,
wow.
in RTA media production, and 300 between the 3 arts programs, which is media production, sport media, and new media. But anyway, 10% acceptance rate. So not flexing, but I
Not
am.
to flex.
But it's fine. But the point is that we had 300 people in the lecture, and then we had a very small group in the labs. None of our work, most of it, wasn't online because it's a very hands-on program. So it's interesting that you bring up online, which is where we're going to next. We asked our audience on Instagram, do you think kids should be at school, or actually, do you prefer in-person learning or learning online through virtual education? And what were the results, Christina?
so 85% of the votes said they preferred in-person education, and 15% of the votes said they preferred virtual education.
Okay, now the question is, where do all of you stand? Christina.
I prefer in-person, but I can appreciate a hybrid model.
Okay, Anna.
I prefer in person.
Okay, and Tanya.
in person.
In person. Okay. Yeah, I think I think I would agree with you just based on the fact that for me, my program, like I said, is so hands-on that I do worry about the people that are in younger years than myself having to graduate from a media production program having done it online. So, the schools were closed and people had to be online. Now, you and other teachers got their wish, smaller class sizes, because you're one in your room. But how do you think it affected students?
I think the younger students, like we're talking from a public school perspective, being online, that can be really hard to manage, especially when they're very young. And if they've been in the schooling system for at least a few years, they've adapted to that way of learning. And it's when you're that young, it can be really hard to make such a big switch. When you're older, if you're forced to move online, you adjust, you adapt. As a kid, that's not as easy. I mean, my mom tells me stories of like she'll be on her Zoom call with her class and there's like kids hanging from their stairwells and kids just leaving the chat, like they just get up and walk away and it's an empty screen.
that one too.
So and she does teach very young kids, like in the grade 2 to 3 range, and she says like the nonsense they get up to is like, and she also gives them like this, just a side note, really cute. She gives them like it's like a 5-minute, at the end of class, they get 5 minutes to type whatever they want in the thing and they can just,
Freedom.
Oh, no.
and so it's just kids go like just typing random letters, poop this, whatever, and just spamming the chat. And she's like, and she gives them like this really short time frame to do that, and they go crazy with it. So I mean, it's a bit of a mess.
Does it help that kids nowadays are so adept at the word is inept. They're so conditioned to know and understand technology today. Does that help them in their online courses?
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, like, it's hard for me to say because I wasn't a kid that knew technology until I was in about middle school. Like I didn't know I didn't have my first cell phone until like the end of middle school. So I mean, we obviously see it differently because we didn't have that same experience. Online learning was out of the question when we were in elementary school. It wasn't even an option for the most part, I assume. But I think I'm sure it makes it easier, but kids are good with technology when it comes to like video game systems and their iPads. I don't know how well they can operate on Zoom and that
Okay.
sort of thing.
Without mentioning that many kids want to be YouTubers. That's like a common wish nowadays.
I mean, it's a valuable career path. That's how people become famous.
And that's how they make money nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, then how come I did not succeed at my YouTube career
Yeah,
when I was in
same,
grade 7?
same.
I would like to know.
I did a Webkins collection. Just saying.
That's a real.
It didn't go viral, but
I
it's
did
fine.
like homemade music videos.
Oh my God. That's why you didn't succeed.
Look, I was like 11 or 12, so
I mean, that's when people are the most creative. I would like evidence of that.
Yeah, me too.
Stay tuned.
it's been completely wiped from the internet. You will not have access to that.
Stay tuned for the Raben Report's undercover investigation into Christina's history
As a YouTuber.
As a YouTuber. So, okay, let's talk about the Toronto Catholic District School Board, because it's funny, you were actually here, Tanya, for our episode on religion, and we
Right.
talked about the Toronto Catholic District School Board.
Right.
Now, recently, they voted to publicly proclaim June as Pride Month and will raise the Pride flag for the first time next month at all their schools. Do you support this move? And I'm going to start with you.
No, but because it goes against their own values as Catholics, you know? So it is like having a Catholic school, but it's not really a Catholic school pretty much when you look at it. And, you know, I do think that in the end of the day, it is like, okay, let's say that they think it's Pride Month. I cannot see the Catholic school really making a big difference. And, you know, I understand from companies, corporations, it truly makes sense because you want to feel your employees included. You want to attract also customer from marketing perspective. It's brilliant. But a Catholic school, especially considering the recent statements of the Vatican regarding, you know, same-sex marriage,
Which were?
that for them is a sin. So it doesn't make sense that on one side you have your you know, Catholic authority telling you this, and then on the other side you're doing this. Like, it doesn't connect.
Tanya?
Yeah, I see your point about how it doesn't connect with the basis of the religion. I see that, but I'm not against that because I think that's great. Like, I know there are going to be gay people who go to those schools and they want some representation, and I think that's fine. So
I think it also speaks to acknowledging that religion doesn't mean you're not going to be gay.
exactly.
There's plenty of Catholic people and other religious people who have to spend their entire life hiding their sexuality or going to conversion camps because their religion tells them that it's a sin to be gay. And unfortunately, you can think what you want, but from what we know, what science has shown us, being gay is not a choice. And you will inevitably have people in religions who are gay, and it also I think it's important to acknowledge that. But I do understand Anna's perspective.
Yeah.
You know, if their message is to, you know, follow the religion, follow the teachings of the Bible, then the pride flag may not align with those values.
I
So
think if they keep that message, that's just going
It's
to
toxic.
prevent. Yeah, it's toxic, and it's going to prevent those religious gay individuals from coming out even further, longer. So
yeah.
So in regards to that, though, how do you... I mean, a lot of people have said that they feel represented now, that the flags have been flown, but how do you decide between what's socially accepted versus religious basis, right? And again, not saying that I don't support it. It's not something that I concern myself with as someone who's not Catholic. But the question is, with regards to Anna's point, it doesn't represent Catholicism. But regards to Christina and Tanya, it's about society moving forward. So how do you...
The thing is that if you read Catholic, the Catholic doctrine is like, of course you can be gay and you can be Catholic, but the thing is that same-sex marriage is considered sinful, just as if you divorce and you go and remarry again, you will be sinful. Like, basically, according to the Catholic doctrine, we are all sinful beings. So in that sense of idea is, you know, it's normal that they consider like anything that you do that is not aligned with the doctrine as sinful, and yet that doesn't mean that should be expelled from the Catholic Church. Because like Pope Francis said, the Catholic Church is a hospital for sick people, and sick people are the sinners. We are all sinners according to the Catholic doctrine.
Wow. Okay. So let's move on then to teachers' unions, and this is a very contentious issue. Teachers are, in Canada, Ontario specifically, are some of the highest paid in the world. Like we just said, in the States, they're underpaid. And they have often striked in regards to pay, in regards to their positions. Now, do you support their strikes and their desires?
Yes. And I know some people will disagree with that. But again, and just because I think it is important for me to bring up my personal connection, just because, you know, I grew up my entire life with a mother as a teacher. So I'm speaking to that experience because I think it just kind of helps me form my opinion. And I've seen the things that the government has done to teachers and the things that have affected my mother, sick days, and we'll get into it, but there's a lot of things that I think they may be paid well here, but we still need to acknowledge, like, I think there's an importance in unions. I think people need to be able to stand up for themselves and fight for their rights as workers. And teachers are up there with like some of the most important professions, I think, you know, alongside, obviously you've got doctors, dentists, nurses, but I really do think teachers are up there. They're teaching the youth of the future, the people who are eventually going to one day be running everything. And so teachers are very, very important. So I think we should give them, you know, a bit more credit.
Do you think that teachers are always doing their best, or there are teachers who don't always do their best, and they're often very difficult to fire because of the unions?
Yes, and I mean, I've had teachers who were very difficult, more than one. You know, plenty of bad experiences with teachers, especially at my first high school. It was brutal. There were like 2 teachers at that school who ended up getting fired for sexual misconduct. So 2 teachers in an entire high school seems like there's a problem. But so obviously I think there's bad teachers. And when it comes to something like that, we need to be able to get rid of these faulty teachers easier than we can right now.
I think like to participate in a union is actually a charter right. So I do think like,
too.
although I don't necessarily, so I don't support wholeheartedly them, but I do think that in some cases they're necessary and they give the worker a say in conditions, but that can, like Elliot said, it can go good or bad. So
now the question I want to ask is what they're teaching right? Is their teaching style effective? Because we have a comment from Mario Greco. He says, the current structure of education robs kids of their childhood, including how homework is delivered, how some people struggle more with work than others in regards to autism, ADD, how it doesn't equip them to be stronger adults. I can go on and on. So in that respect, from my experience, and I assume from both of yours, we have had a lot of work as students.
I'm pretty sure that this may have only been for university, but like students are current day busier than they ever had been in history.
And the statistic that I mentioned on a previous show is that students today have the same amount of anxiety as psychiatric patients in the 1950s.
Exactly. There's a big issue. So
is that a result of the education system, or is that a result of society as a whole?
I don't know if it's I'm not gonna I don't think it's attached to like curriculum, but maybe in terms of the system, yes. Like when we talk about these large class sizes, these struggles with anxiety, we do need to be approaching it differently. I think these are students who need more support, and the structure that we have right now very often fails them. So I think that the education system, the way we function in terms of class sizes, IEPs that we offer students, diagnoses, whatever it is, I think that there needs to be a bit of a change. I don't know necessarily how to go about it.
I feel like there could be a problem with standardized testing. Like, I know everyone
EQAO.
has... Yeah, everyone has their... every student has their strengths and their weaknesses. I know I was not the greatest at math, but I was really good at English.
I was same with me.
Yeah, so it just, like, we need to work at our flaw, whatever it is. But I think maybe if... I don't want to say they should eradicate the EQAO and standardized testings at large, but I think there needs to be some tweaking because the way that they're designed is not for, like... Not everyone,
not inclusive.
Yeah, it's definitely not
Well,
for learning styles and whatnot.
Inclusion is something I want to talk about in regards to education. For one thing, Bill 287, but the other thing is with regards to inclusivity. When you have people that have IEPs and have certain learning, I guess, special notices or requirements, whatever, how can you actually have an equitable learning environment? Because everybody has different needs. And how come people are promoting this?
Well, I think that's we need to understand that people have different learning styles. People have different shortcomings. I don't want to call autism or ADHD a shortcoming. That, I just mean that I think that we need to be understanding of student accommodating. Yeah. That's what it is. I was a student who had anxiety, and I've had anxiety my entire life. I didn't get special. I wasn't given special circumstances until I got to university, and I had to really beg for them at university too.
How do you accommodate students with anxiety?
Well, so for me in university, so I have generalized anxiety disorder, which is a psychiatric disorder. I have to be treated for it with medication, and there's other treatments I can do. And there were a few options. It's catered to the student and their individual kind of needs. So for me, it was like I could request extensions as needed if I needed a bit more time on a paper. My exams, I didn't write in those giant exam rooms. I actually wrote them in a room like this size with 10 other people. So there were different accommodations. They still do it.
Yeah, in university they do that too.
Yeah. So I don't know how you would do it in elementary school necessarily.
Well, it's still done the same way. In elementary schools, I know people who wrote tests outside in a different room. But that's the question. If you want an equitable, not equal, but equitable learning society or learning institution space, how do you do that when you give people these exceptions? And these exceptions, in my view at least, people are different. But when people advocate for equity, is that attainable? And how do you do it?
You could do it through homeschooling, except I don't agree with that. But that's one way that's just one way that you have the full control, and you can take the Ontario curriculum, combine it with religious elements, whatever you want, and do it from the setting of your own home. So in that case, you can do whatever, everything can be equal. It's all in your terms, but I don't think that that's a good that's not a good way to socialize children. So
interesting. Well, we actually had a comment from Vithushan who says no child left behind thinking has contributed to this mess, and I would assume that relates to what you were saying about.
But why should we leave a child behind? Children are all like, we should be catering to their needs. Like these are like the most formative years of their lives. I'm not saying we need to, start giving everybody an accommodation, because I don't agree with that. But we definitely need to take into account that like people operate differently, and especially children who struggle with something like ADHD, autism, and other learning disabilities.
Actually, it's very interesting, but my best friend in university, he has autism, and as a matter of fact, he was like behaving in class in the beginning in a certain way that a lot of people used to criticize because they have a different form of behavior, but it was also very beneficial to him because people with autism, they remember things a lot and they remember it very quickly. So imagine a student law reading all these articles. He was a machine, man. Like,
yeah, they've got a lot of them have like crazy photogenic memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jealous.
So what I'm trying to say is that even though it can be a disadvantage in certain circumstances, it can be a great advantage in other circumstances.
Okay. So let's continue about curriculum, and that's Bill 287. So the curriculum guidelines issued by Minister Lucille Collard shall ensure that information on the following topics is included in the curriculum for junior kindergarten, and each grade from grade 1 through grade 12 in an age-appropriate manner. The history of colonization and its impact on the rights of Indigenous and racialized people, the ongoing racial and social inequities in Ontario, including, in particular, disparities in Ontarians' experiences with Ontario's healthcare, justice, and education systems, and how pupils can contribute to building an inclusive and equitable Ontario. Now, this all stemmed from a petition started by Ryerson student Parnika Raj, and now it's being presented in at Queen's Park tomorrow. Do you support this bill, and why or why not?
I am somewhere in the middle because I don't. So this is the thing. I would say I lean more towards no, but not because I necessarily disagree with what's being put forward, but because I don't think that we should start enacting laws that essentially force educators to teach from a liberal standpoint, and to teach basically solely from the left. Having gone to university and having studied politics, I learned politics from a liberal lens, which I don't think, and I think, Tanya, you also studied politics?
Yeah. I was going to say, though, I think, so I started off in sociology, and in my opinion, sociology as a major is a lot more worse. Like, if you think politics,
for sure.
like,
Sociology?
yeah,
Oh my God.
I funnily enough, I actually also started in social psychology, which is similar to sociology, and it was definitely worse. But I think when
I think there's actually there's crucial information to take from sociology. Mm-hmm. There's very basic points to it that I think should almost be you should be taking it in high school. Mm-hmm. But like it goes to a certain point where it's just like that major can just make you depressed. Like all you learn is negativity.
And that's the other thing, that everything around you sucks, basically, is what it teaches you. And I think, so from my own experience, like McMaster was an incredible school. I had great politics teachers. They weren't all biased. But I definitely had quite a few who taught multiple of my courses, and they were completely biased towards the left. Yeah. And look, I'm on the left. I love to hear it. But from an education standpoint, I do not want to learn only liberal.
So you think?
I think it's wrong to because we need to have an unbiased, non-political education system. I mean, if you're studying politics, it'll be political to some extent, but we need to be things need to be taught from an unbiased perspective. But I will say, with the whole needing to improve our what we teach students about Indigenous history, I do think that it needs to be revamped a bit. I'm saying that because when I went to elementary school, I came out of school not knowing enough about Indigenous history, and I didn't understand enough about
reservations.
Residential schools, and I was 18, which was like not that long ago.
Honestly, I think that you're not going to learn everything in school ever in your life.
It's impossible. I just don't think that when we're teaching history, it should. The problem that I have with like history class in particular is the lack of, they may incorporate Indigenous studies in it, but when I was studying it, I did not learn enough. Like, I don't know. I just.
It is very difficult when I see a bill proposing something like the ongoing racial and social inequities in Ontario. Like the fact that you are teaching people like, okay, I am Latina. I'm probably going to have, kids in Canada. The last thing that I want my kid to experience is, Mom, I'm a minority and I'm a victim and I'm affected. And because, to be honest, that's giving them a loser mentality. Mm-hmm. And I refuse that my future kids will go to a school and that's what they're going to get from their teachers. And being the way I am, I think I'm going to end up in the school fighting that teacher. So I really don't want that.
I'm just concerned because I remember in elementary school, it was very multicultural, tons of kids of every races, all different skin tones. And I never once as a young kid would look around me and think that someone was of lesser value because of the color of their skin. And I'm concerned because I truly feel that this bill, implementing this bill, the word ongoing, these social that's just going to continue it. That's not going to eradicate what they want. Like, if you tell a young children that because of your skin color, you are not as privileged as this white person, you may not get it as much money as this person. Like, what? I'm sorry, according to who? Because
and that's a really good point when you look at the fact that students look around them and they don't think anything about race.
Will make you think about
they suddenly start thinking about race because everyone's telling them there's a problem with race.
Exactly.
I get that.
And honestly, it's also like limiting these students. You teach them how to be limited, and in the end you start believing like, maybe I'm not good enough indeed.
Yeah, it's putting them in a box, and that's gonna prevent them from
reaching their potential.
Yeah, reaching their potential and just being individually autonomous.
And I think when I say that we need to improve what we're teaching about, I agree with what you guys have said. But when I'm talking about like the Indigenous curriculum, I just mean that I don't mean that we need to teach it from a perspective of all Indigenous people are lesser than you. I don't want it to be taught from that perspective. I just think we need to tell kids more about
history and
about
culture.
history and what really happened. We shouldn't only be, like when I was in school, so much of it focused on Canada when it was founded and not all the shit that had to happen before that. I didn't focus enough on residential schools, which I think is very important. The last residential school only closed in 96. That is like yesterday.
Yeah.
So I do think that we need to be I'm not saying teach it from a race perspective, but teach it from a history perspective.
Well, in regards to teaching it from a race perspective, one of the things that this bill says is they want a private group of people to ensure that the right stuff is being taught, and they want everybody to be trained. The people, the teachers.
How do they do that?
Good question.
Without there being... Yeah. No, I don't...
I mean, it always comes down to race, right? Like, how do you...
Right.
Well, I think we definitely have... Canada has a nasty history, like that we can all agree probably every marginalized group to some degree has experienced depression.
Canada has one of the worst histories of genocide, and we don't talk about it.
And I think that, well, you're right, and I think that it should be addressed in schools, but the past, because there are no current laws in effect that are racist. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist in society, but there's no institutional racism that I can understand.
From a legal point of view.
Yeah, from a legal point of view. Just from a legal point of view. And that was in effect in history. And I think that's important to continue. And that hasn't gone away. They still teach that. So it's just strengthening that and then continuing it and saying, in the future that it's always going to be that way. That's not getting rid of what your goal is.
Yeah, and I agree with the ongoing point. It's like, what happens 10 years from now when the social justice warriors have gone even further and we're continuing to add things to the curriculum that we don't need to be teaching
Honestly,
students.
I think I'm going to be homeschooling my kids by that point.
I may as well. I don't know.
I mean,
it's scary. It's scary.
A lot of people are already just planning to not have kids because they're worried about their kids going to school. But let's talk about the future of children, and that's when they go from high school to university, because this movement of ongoing racial inequities and such is very much takes up the discussion in university campuses. I mean, every class talks about racism, and, in media, I can understand it because we're reporting and you want to be unbiased, but a lot of it comes off as biased. So what was your experience like in post-secondary? We heard about yours, Christina.
I did have, just to add to it though, I did have experiences of actually having teaching assistants basically grade me poorly because they disagreed with what I said.
Oh, see that?
And that's super problematic. I had a class who, it was about, I can't remember what it was. It was a political class, and I thought I was going to do great. It was ran by this Chilean man, so I was like, I was all over it, loving it. And then I wrote a paper on what I disagree with religion about, because I've been vocal about it. I'm an atheist, and I do see a lot of flaws with religion. And I wrote a paper on it because I was told to write a paper on it. The question was, what's wrong with blah, 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 or what's the relationship between homophobia and religion. And so I wrote a whole paper on it, and I explained what was wrong with it. And the teaching assistant, like, had these comments being like, really? Passive aggressive comments in my paper saying, really? This isn't actually true. And it's like, okay, you're a teaching assistant, first of all. So please,
TAs
Not even the
always
teacher.
mark the worst.
but to grade me because you disagree with my point of view goes against everything we're supposed to
Well,
stand for
that's-
when it comes to education.
That's the biggest thing that goes on in universities. You're not alone in this. And I feel like a lot of people who if they don't think like the woke mob, then if they don't think how their professor wants them to think, then they're going to fail. So you might as well just say what people want to hear.
It depends on the professor because, like, Christina's definitely right. At Ryerson, though, I remember there were a couple, at least in my experience, a couple of professors where they said specifically, like, oh, you don't have to agree with me. I've had tons of students who write papers where I don't agree with them at all, and they've gotten A's. You just have to write well. And sometimes they'll be correct, but sometimes they're mostly just saying that, like, you need to write really, really well. Like, I've done it. I disagreed with professors and wrote a decent paper, but it's almost easier to just agree with them and do it that way, so it's less work and people just do that. Yeah. So
That's that.
which means you're not really learning as much.
No, it's to the point that Christina was saying. It's a lot of just going along with what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And how does that affect the future of children if they actually have to suppress how they really feel?
That's so discouraging. Like, just as an adult, getting that kind of feedback on my work was discouraging. Like, I'm supposed to be able to say what I think, and it was an opinionated piece. I wasn't, I'm supposed to be able to express that. I'm allowed to think differently, and we need to encourage diversity of thought. And the universities aren't encouraging that right now. They're encouraging you to be on the left, not even liberal.
Right.
You need to be on the left.
Yeah, I remember the first professor I had, she was a philosophy professor. Actually, she wasn't even from the politics department, but I think this was in like my third year. She was the first one who introduced me to Ben Shapiro, PragerU, Jordan Peterson, but she didn't do it in a way that was... She didn't say, oh, I support these people. I want to let you guys know that there's another side. And I feel like what you've been learning thus far is not appropriate to be able to learn critical thinking skills, debate skills. And a lot of these people want to be lawyers. We're in politics, right? So she was like the first one that I just really appreciated because she gave that whole spectrum. And it's like, if every professor did that in a non-biased way, like, wow, we'd have amazing critical thinkers. Like, so...
Now, Anna,
not that we don't, but
now, Anna, and here's before I get to you now, because you mentioned critical thinking. So many people have tried to cancel this show at Ryerson for 4 years. They didn't care about intellectual diversity. They didn't care that just because the four of us looked like four white men, that was the problem. It didn't matter that Marshall, Adam, and Daniel thought differently from each other. Yeah. It didn't matter. It was like, unless you all think a certain way, then it's
look
okay.
in a certain way.
Right, or look a certain way. So to you, Anna, having gone to post-secondary in Venezuela and having gone to post-secondary here, I know it was for a small time, but how was it? What were the differences? What were the similarities? How did you feel?
Well, of course, here you have more technology available. You have more resources available in order to, to improve your performance. I did not, because I was working crazy hours, to be honest, survival jobs, but that's the life of an immigrant. And the reality is that I enjoyed a lot law school in Venezuela, because when you are studying law, you debate a lot. So remember that. And, you get to express yourself, and you need to be, extroverted. And even though I disagree with my professors, I will never forget that one of them called me a guerrillera in a class.
What is that?
In front of people. Like, a guerrillero is like a person from
It just
paramilitary
sounds so
group.
pretty. Like it
No,
sounds like
No,
it's actually
it's not pretty.
It's an armed group.
Okay.
That pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And
it's like the cartel.
it's not a
Isn't it?
cartel. It's like becoming part of Hamas.
Oh,
Pretty much, it's like
Maybe one step below the cartel.
Yeah, one tell
Just-
exactly.
You're almost there.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, because of my strong political opinions, and it is very interesting because still you get to debate, and I think that my school was very unbiased in that way.
And what about here?
Here, I honestly found it quite unbiased too, fortunately. But
Really?
why it's interesting? Because I did a postgraduate, and a lot of these people were also immigrants from many places who were not there to care about stupid stuff, to be honest. You only want to get your freaking Canadian education
And move
go,
on.
exactly, and get into the workforce and get your immigration papers. That's what you want.
Now, something that I want to direct at you specifically is being an immigrant, and you were a lawyer in Venezuela, but your credentials aren't recognized here as a lawyer. How does that make you feel, and do you think that your credentials should be recognized?
It doesn't make me feel bad in the sense that I understand the purpose. When it comes to law, and this is something that I advise to every law student, remember that your career is going to be very local. Why? Because it changed. The law changes across countries. If you're a lawyer in Canada and you decide to move to Santiago, Chile, you're not going to work as a lawyer.
yeah.
Because you're going to be there to learn Chilean legislation. That's what you will have to do. So unfortunately, in my career, I had to move from my country. It sucks, but I understand the reason behind it. Now, I really don't like, for example, I had a conversation with this friend of mine on the weekend, and she's a Canadian lawyer, and she was like, you know what, because I study this many years of law school, and therefore I deserve this and that, and I was like, I studied also many years in law school. And she was like, yeah, but you did it in Venezuela, like putting me below. And to be honest,
See, no.
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 That's a no from me.
But also, like,
and before anyone thinks about it, this didn't come from a white person, because I know that they put a face very easily. But yeah, basically that was irritating.
Now, Tanya, you are studying to be a lawyer, and what's your position on this?
I agree with Anna. I think, you asked me this before the show, and I have that same opinion. I think as far as a lawyer goes, the law is very critical to which country, and it always changes. So it's for someone to learn legislation from not even like the States and then Canada, but someone like South America and then here is a little bit too.
Even inside Canada, go to Quebec and you have a different legal system.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
I think, but that being said, I do think that there's value to that degree, and I think it creates more diversity here. But I feel like there's still like a needed position for that. Like, I don't think you can be a lawyer here, but you could do a bunch of other things that a lot of other immigrants could
Are
do.
related to law.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
where do you draw the line, though? Because let's say someone's an engineer or a doctor. I mean, the body doesn't change between countries.
No, so that's-
But, yeah.
No, I just was going to say, I was thinking about it when it comes to transferring credits in that regard. Like I'm pretty. Do doctors, if you get your doctorate degree somewhere else, does it not apply here?
No, it doesn't apply.
All I know is like
Yeah.
our health, like we're behind in healthcare here. So
okay. See, I thought that like we had a lot of immigrant doctors here, but I guess they probably had to go through extra
Yeah.
schooling.
Yes.
Well, and even as a music teacher, you have to go through a bunch of courses. Like, what is there a line? Should there be a line?
To be honest, I understand it for certain careers.
Yeah, sure.
But I will bring an example of what happened in a South American country. It's Peru. They were hit very hard by the COVID pandemic. They needed a lot of doctors. And in the beginning, they were not recognizing the Venezuelan immigrants who were doctors. You know what happened when they needed the doctors? They took the Venezuelan doctors and they were able to prove themselves, because a heart is a heart in India, in Chile, in Canada. Like, honestly, I understand that they care about standards and that's important, but you are missing so much talent in such an important field.
And how does it feel when people immigrate here and they know that their credentials aren't going to be recognized, because you hear so many stories about people who were doctors and engineers back in their country, and they're unfortunately the most that they can afford to do, or they're a taxi driver, or they're working in a store at Walmart.
You're missing talent. That's what you get. You're missing talent.
It's terrible, and I understand why we need to, when it comes to transferring credits, like when you're looking at something like law or even education, and there's a difference in the systems depending on the country. We do need to understand that extra education or would be necessary to get somebody who has, like, say you have a teaching degree somewhere else. You do need to come here and learn our system. And I think that's fair to say for other careers that kind of fall under that umbrella, that operate differently country by country. It is very discouraging, though. I feel badly for, and I mean, I personally know people who came here with, in one country they had everything and they came here and they have nothing, and it's sad. I do think we need to be offering them more.
Now, do you think that this is a result of the fact that we have such a well-established education system in Canada? Is it because they want people to be educated by Canadian standards because we're so well-known around the world? Or is it just about pride, national identity, like you're not...
Well, our
Canadians
national
are better?
identity is supposed to incorporate
multicultural.
And I also... To speak to that, Canada, like in terms of when you're talking about like nationalism and being proud of your country, Canada's not one of those countries that's like, you go to the States and the patriotism there is not something you see here.
I mean, also in regards...
I was just gonna say, like, their health, their like medicine and healthcare is a lot more advanced than us. So I think in some ways they have a little more to be proud of.
Well, in regards to the difference between the States and Canada, like in the States you can sue the hospital if they make a mistake. In Canada you can't. So
what? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, because it's OHIP, right?
Okay.
So
is this what happens with all universal healthcare systems?
I don't know. I can only speak to Canada, but what I know is that you can't. From what I know, you can't sue doctors and hospitals. So if someone makes a mistake, you took that risk.
So when those nurses injected saline instead of the COVID vaccine,
they probably still have their job.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know that I was reading actually the other day about a doctor I think it was in Scarborough or Mississauga. I don't remember the area, but he basically was charging, like he was abusing the healthcare system and charging more, even when he was looking at his patients for like 5 minutes. And it was absolutely crazy, and he was actually brought to court pretty much because of that. I don't know what is the resolution, but you can find your specialist in that sense.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the system here. I think everyone here has agreed that it's a pretty good system. It needs some changes, but let's talk about the future. This is where we're going to end off. And what is the future of education in Canada? Anna, I'm going to start with you.
I think it's going to become more progressive. I think that a lot of people will need to start checking out what their kids are learning in school. And yes, that's what I think, awareness to the parents about what they learn, and consider homeschooling as an alternative, because I don't think this is the way that things are going to be. They're going to become more progressive because a lot of people are going to start pushing for that, and a lot of people don't get like the big picture. They only see the good intentions, and they don't think what can be behind.
Well, as far as Ontario goes, I truly don't think that Ford is going to pass. Is it Bill 287?
Yep, it is Bill 287.
Yeah, I do not think that the Ford government will pass that. But that being said, there could create a stronger backlash, which would then, depending on who
wins,
that could change for Ontario. So if critical race theory becomes the new curriculum, then I'm homeschooling my kids.
Wow. And Christina?
I want to be hopeful. I always do. I want to hope
So
for
naive.
the I know. I want to hope for the best. Just because I did have, like, besides a few flaws, I did have such a good experience with public school, and it's because of my the public schools I went to that I ended up at post-secondary school, and I completed post-secondary school. So I appreciate it, and I think we have a very strong system. And look, worldwide, we are recognized for our education system. We excel.
I think. Go ahead.
No, just so I'm hoping that we are continue in a good direction. I agree that we need to make some adjustments in terms of both curriculum and the structure. But I do worry that we're going to get to a place where we're teaching kids everything from the social justice warrior perspective.
One thing that I wanted to bring up earlier, and it just popped into my mind, is the difference in education, even between Ontario and Quebec, because the friends that I have from Quebec speak better English than Ontarians speak French.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
their English is far better than my French. And that's truly disappointing for me as someone who really admires and is proud of knowing French, but I wish that, some of my teachers said so themselves. They were French teachers in elementary school, and they said, I haven't really practiced French in about 20 years, but I'm your French teacher. And I'm sitting there like, sacré bleu, So
I mean, that's I think a lot of us Canadians recognize, like, we're a bilingual country, but only the French are bilingual. Like,
mind you, New Brunswick is the only officially bilingual province.
I actually wanted to bring this up earlier. It was just a thought of mine that I was thinking about before the show, but you can, it's known that if you're bilingual in Canada, you can get amazing jobs. And I just think that, I think they stop mandatory French in grade 10. I don't know if that's changed.
Yeah, you have to take it until grade 9, I believe.
Okay, yeah. And I think if they maybe extended it to grade 12, or, if everyone, or if the most people could become bilingual, then that would help a lot in the job field.
For sure.
Yeah.
I took core French, so I did French through...
I took it all the way as well.
I graduated with a trilingual certificate.
Wow.
Can I speak a single word of French? I mean, I can understand it, and if you forced me to, I'm sure I could figure it out. But... I graduated having studied French basically all of my schooling years, and
Including university or no?
No, I didn't take it in university.
That's why I'm mad, because it's all gone now.
Yeah, no, but even when I graduated, I didn't know, in high school, I didn't know French.
I took it in university. I took French from grade 1 up until my 4th year in university, and I know very few people that have done that, and I think that's a personal choice, right?
Yeah. I just
I just think it would benefit, if we all had to take it, then
There's actually a comment from Vithush, and he says, learning English is far more important to Quebecers because they're surrounded by Anglophones, but outside of Quebec, French has little relevance.
Exactly. That's what what I wanted to add. In the end of the day, if you want to move out of that French sphere, you had to know English. But how many people from Ontario you find that, my dream is to move to Quebec?
Nobody.
Well, it just, I mean, number one, moving to Quebec, but also just in terms of jobs, you have more access to opportunity, especially with government jobs, if you know English and French. So, do any of you plan on pursuing more education in the future, Anna?
I do. I would like to become a lawyer here, and I would like to learn French, as a matter of fact. So
I would love both those things.
Yeah.
For you. I'd love to see you be a lawyer here.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I can't teach you law, but we can set up some French lessons if you can set me up with some Spanish lessons.
Sure.
I don't think I'm going to continue or go to school again. Once I finished my undergrad, I was like, I am never doing anything like that ever again. I am so tired. I am so stressed out. I never want to do it. But
Have you ever had to write essays in your profession?
no, actually. Yeah, in politics, you have to write 30-page essays, and I'm not even exaggerating. I had courses where you literally had to, the requirement was minimum 30 pages.
Can barely count to 30.
Politics is insane to study here. It's a mess.
Aww.
But I don't know. I'm young, and I've been I started my career very young, so I am privileged in that sense. But maybe one day, because I am young. Who knows? Maybe in the future I'll change my mind and I'll want to try something else. So.
And Tanya, you are pursuing more education.
Honestly, yeah, but I'm like, I graduated a year ago now, and I'm still waking up from that. Like, no, seriously, I still feel mental exhaustion, like, daily, even though it's a little bit, it's still there. Like, I still don't even feel like I've graduated because we didn't have a convocation.
Absolutely.
But, like, yeah, so I do plan on going to law school, I hope, and I mean, I wish I didn't want to be a lawyer because it's so much work, but that's all I want to do, and it sucks.
Well, it's good that you have drive, and it's good that you have passion.
Thank you.
And, you know, I personally, when I graduated, I was so excited, and then I thought maybe I should go back and get a degree or get a certificate in Spanish because I like Spanish and I want to learn Spanish. But then again, seeing what's going on in the world, Rosetta Stone or Anna, it is. But lastly, do you guys have any advice for current and future students, especially in the elementary and high schools? Very quickly.
I have one for post-secondary students right now because it's all online, and my sister is one of those students. And she hasn't had the opportunity to experience university the way that many of us did. And I thought that like in-person learning is so important. I think there's a lot of value in it, and I hope that that's something that they can return to very soon. I think it makes us smarter. It makes us more involved and part of the public forum and whatever. So I hope that they can return to that. But in the meantime, enjoy what you're learning. It may not be taught to you the way that you would like for it to be taught to you because it's all online, but enjoy it and just hold out for in-person learning because once it comes, you are going to love it, and university is going to be 10 times more exciting.
Okay. Anna?
Well, I think that education is important. What you're learning in school is important, but go for more, go after more. Don't take only what you're reading. Go for that extra mile and find your ways to learn more. We live in the times of technology. Everything is one Google away, one Google search. So, read and educate yourself as well, because that's what is going to make a difference.
However, don't rely on Google entirely because
True.
And Tanya?
I will say that I am one who has always valued education, and I love school. And even when I was young, I didn't necessarily go to school with the academic excitement, but I went for the social aspect. And I think I just want to say, though, if you're someone who feels like you're pressured to go to university or to go to whatever it is, just post-secondary school, college, because you think that you need it in order to get a good job or whatever it is, I don't think that's true. And I don't think that you should go to school just because other people are telling you should. I think that it's a very personal decision, and that more and more it's becoming more common to not go to school and find other means of making money. And
and that's also important. Students in high school shouldn't feel like that's the only option for them and that they're going to be failures without it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because it's not for everybody. School is not for everybody.
Do you think that's the narrative, though? Like, you go to school, get a job, make money. That's the narrative in schools?
Not always. It depends. There's like different courses you can take, but I think that they do really put an emphasis on, college and university applications are coming up, and the courses you take in high school are literally labeled university and college, and so I do think that it's kind of.
It's all designed for the betterment of the student, so I know it's not negative. It's just not for everyone.
I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do think that students should remember that you can do other things. Yeah. There's trades, there's whatever. You can be an entrepreneur, a YouTuber if you'd like, which doesn't require schooling.
I think promoting entrepreneurship is a great idea.
Yes.
Well, we all agreed on that point, and I can say so myself. I mean, I really enjoy being my own boss, running my own business, having my own show, but that's where we're going to leave it for today. That was our show for this week. Thank you to everyone that tuned in and that messaged us live. Tanya, thank you so much for joining the panel again this week, the 4th time, and the last time of the Raben Report.
Thanks, Sad. I love this show. No, really, like when I was still in undergrad, I watched the show and I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's such a good idea. And I'm sad to see it go. So.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you've enjoyed the show, and when people say that the show has actually made a difference and they're actually learning and enjoying it, that's all I can really ask for. Christina and Anna, second last show.
I came to the show feeling bittersweet. Now I kind of just feel sad.
Actually, one of my friends from Venezuela, she's a journalist, and she told me like, wow, I'm impressed of the arguments that you guys make in the Raben Report. They love it. Like, it's amazing, especially when you see that people from far places are watching.
It does
so far
mean a lot.
we've made an impact.
Well, based on the statistics that I have on the page, I don't know who, I don't know how, but the Raben Report has been viewed in over 50 countries.
What?
Yes!
Guys, you guys are famous.
Go off, Raben Report.
Mind you, some guy in Saudi Arabia might have accidentally clicked the show.
True.
Who knows? But
At least he clicked it.
But also to give, I mean, I've got people in Chile watching. Probably she's got her Venezuelans. That's only 2 countries, but I mean,
Mexico.
yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah.
a large sum of
You got-
supporters.
We do have, we have a lot of support, but just FYI, just to you, Christina, when I look at the statistics on Anchor for who's watching on Spotify and everything, very few people from Chile, a lot from Venezuela. But
so
very
are there
few,
no Chilean viewers?
I mean, I can't see the number, but I can see like the percentage.
The percentage.
And you need to go back home.
And
tell
get
them
some,
to get their shit together?
Advocate. Hey, it would do such a great favor to Chile, honestly, to watch a Raben Report.
To be totally honest, I only have I think there are only 2 or 3 of my Chilean family members have reached out to me and said that they watched the show. So unfortunately,
So you are disowning the rest of the family, right?
Yeah, everybody else,
agree.
the hundreds of other family members, can leave.
Well, it's the same. I have family in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, the States that are watching, and I appreciate it. So I genuinely do. And again, bittersweet. Final episode, second last episode. The final episode is next week. One more episode, and it's going to be one that you don't want to miss. So. Once again, that was our show for this week. Thank you to everyone that tuned in, messaged us live. A brand new episode, the final episode of the Raben Report, will be coming to you next week, same day, same time, almost the same people. Have a good night, everyone.